Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. This is episode 10. Training camp well underway this week. Today we got all the early impressions of Cowboys training camp from California. Zack Hedrick's going to join us, our Cowboys reporter, so that's great. Got a lot has happened in a few days. Got Trevon Diggs' new deal, which was probably in place the last time we talked, but didn't. No one wanted to tell us anything. Zack Martin still hasn't shown up, and like I said, Zack will be joining us here in a little bit with the vibe around the team, what he's seen from California, and all that. So, quick reminder: you can download, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Thank you in advance for all the support. As always, I am your host, Matt Roy, joined by Don Harris and Chuck Migatinick. Guys, how are you this week?
Great, man.
Great, Matthew.
It's hot.
It is a little hot.
I'd like to be where Zack Hedrick is right now, 70 degrees.
We were talking earlier, and he said it was about 80 degrees, but it's like it's under a magnifying glass, so it feels hotter there than it is. And then I told him that it's 105 here or whatever it is, and so it might have shut him up a little bit.
Yeah, but once it gets about 7 o'clock there, it goes like the high 50s.
Yeah, it's like right off the coast. Like
nice.
I'd much rather be
so
there.
So it's a Hubble telescope here, is what you're saying. Yes.
Pretty much. So let's get right to it, guys. One thing I absentmindedly left off of here is let's start with the injury. So when we left on Monday, both of you guys said a successful training camp is a non-injured training camp. Well, that only lasted about a day because Donovan Wilson now, from all accounts, is out 4 to 6 weeks with a grade 2 calf strain. What do you got, Chuck? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, then you got the other safety too, one of the younger guys whose name I'm going to butcher, Mukamaru. He's really long and lanky, and, you know, every time you go to an OTA or a practice, like, this guy really pops. He looks like a good player, too. So, yeah, they're infinitely thin now to start camp. But, you know, for Donovan Wilson, you could say, you know, how much reps or how many reps does this guy need before he needs to get ready for the season? Probably not many. However, you still don't want one of your starters down for a minimum of a month. You know, this time of year. I mean, this is where you're team building, continuity-wise on the field and off the field. Not a good way to start, for sure, especially when McCarthy said they were going to ease into things and they were just going to go, you know, basically with the whatever phase 8 of the install or wherever they're at in that.
Right.
You know, I'm not worried about it. Seen this a million times over the years. I think, to Chuck's point, it's a little concerning that, you know, you're in team building mode and all that kind of stuff, but boy, Donovan really played well the last couple of years and earned that contract. And my concern more than anything would be, did he come in out of shape or it's a calf strain? And so, you know, that's one of those, are you stretching? Are you doing all those kind of things? But again, if he puts on pads against the Giants on Sunday Night Football, all's well.
I mean, those soft tissue injuries, you just can never really tell. You don't know when they're going to happen, where they're going to happen. At least it wasn't a hammy, I guess, because those
or
will
an
linger.
Achilles. Yeah, if it was lower in the calf.
Those will continue to linger. I'm concerned about the depth behind him. I mean, they have Janiah Thomas, who's a rookie. You got Malik Hooker playing behind him, so he'll probably step into the starting role, and then Tyler Coyle's a second-year guy. So some more young guys going to be thrust into really pivotal roles.
For what? Practices at the Star?
But I mean, those reps matter, especially when you're trying to be the historic defense that we all think that they can be.
I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it obviously hurts too this time of year when you're running reps and, you know, you're trying to run all these different things at your defenses, and that's why they've got 100 guys in camp, right? I mean, because you got to have guys out on the field. So to have him and then to have Mukamaru also with a hamstring, I mean, that's 2 guys at one position on day one, so they're going to have to figure something out.
They'll bring some guys in, I would think.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. And, I mean, like I said, it's probably a good thing. 4 to 6 weeks leads you right into the first week of the season pretty much. So we'll see what happens there. So, guys, for the first couple of days, we had the State of the Cowboys address. We had, you know, everyone showing up. Zack Martin's not there, all the hoopla. What were your first impressions so far, the first couple of days of training camp after hearing Jerry, Steven, and Mac talk a little bit?
I don't know that I had too many initial impressions, only I think because I went to 4 practices during OTAs and minicamp. A lot of this stuff is stuff I've already heard before, but I did think it was interesting. McCarthy was asked pretty early on in that press conference about who's going to fill the void from Zeke, how many more carries is Pollard going to get, and he said he's more worried about how that all looks with what's going on in the perimeter, and I thought that spoke volumes, actually. It's like, I think they're comfortable with who they have backing up Pollard with the 4 or 5 guys that they've got stacked behind him and who they end up, breaking camp with and who's going to end up being on the roster. But it is going to be important, I think, to watch this all evolve because this is going to be a different looking team. They're going to be, I think, infinitely more centered around the run than they've ever been. And, it's going to look a little differently depending on, game-to-game situations. And I think the splits will be sort of even, but I think there's going to be more of an emphasis to keep the ball on the ground, keep the ball from, having to go from the quarterback's hands to a wide receiver's hands, getting the ball tipped. There's so many things that can happen when you throw a football. And, this is a way for this team to grind out drives, keep their defense fresh in the fourth quarter. And I just think it's going to look a lot different, not a lot different, but it's going to look different enough that it's going to be pretty noticeable when we hit the regular season.
You think Dak's attempts will be significantly down?
I don't know if they're going to be significantly down. I just think they're going to be a lot smarter with how they go about chucking the ball down the field. They always do play action, every team does, but I just think with the more of an emphasis on running the football, getting back to what McCarthy really wanted to do and was trying to do towards the end of his tenure in Green Bay. I mean, just got to take some of the pressure off your quarterback, and the best way to do that is figure out some creative ways to run the football.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be – I don't think it's going to be – with Pollard's size, I don't think it's going to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust off tackle. I think you're going to see Deuce Vaughn and Pollard, and I think Davis is capable of getting tough yards. But I think you'll see jet sweeps, and you'll see all kinds of option pitches, and I think you'll see short routes with CD. My takeaway from the press conference is just how much Jerry Jones loves this stuff, man. He just every first day he's in his element, and he's grateful to be there. And he talks about that. He talks about, look at the guys who aren't there that he's seen come and go over 30 years, whether it's players, GMs, coaches, owners. He's happy to just be doing it, but he does have high expectations. They're spending the money. They've got a great roster. They have high expectations. I think they think they're capable of going to the Super Bowl. And I think that's something that fans should embrace, because I don't think any of us over the last 3 or 4 years, as much as we wanted to, thought that the Cowboys were contenders. They always kind of sell it like, oh, believe this is the year. Nah, we're never going to buy that. But as I've said this last couple of weeks, I think there's some reason to buy into the fact that I think they can contend.
You guys both mentioned Tony Pollard. Let's talk about him a little bit. Mac has pretty much said that he stepped into that leadership role that Zeke left. And I find that to be really interesting, especially since on the offensive front, especially without Zack Martin there, you're kind of devoid of leaders and people who have been there for a really long time. So what do you guys think of having that leadership and Tony Pollard kind of stepping up and being like, what, this is my running back room now. This is kind of my offense along with Dak, that I kind of have to step into that role.
Yeah, I think it's an evolution, right? And with these leagues and these sports where the players are getting younger and younger, I mean, Tony Pollard's got skins on the wall, right? If anybody should be able to step up and fill that void that obviously Zeke has left now that he's not here, it should be Tony Pollard. I mean, he ran tough last year. He finished runs. He was always falling forward at the end of runs. He looked a lot like Zeke, just with better burst and better athleticism. And so, why not? You've gotten the contract. The contract also, too, you're not given that contract unless you're a hell of a player. So everything that you may have thought Tony Pollard doesn't mean that we've written the final chapter on him, right? Maybe he's going to turn out to be just the same kind of leader, or maybe better than Zeke is. We'll just have to wait and see.
He also might have to prove himself this entire year to prove that he's worth another contract next year, because, he's on a 1-year, $10.1 million contract right now.
Todd Archer's writing that he could be Walter Payton and still maybe not come back next year.
Yeah, probably not. It's the way the running backs look right now.
Yeah.
But did you guys see that he said that Zeke texted him?
Yeah.
What'd you guys think of that?
I think Zeke's bored and needs – I think Zeke desperately wants to stay a Cowboy. He desperately wanted to be a Cowboy. Yeah. And he loves those guys. He loves that team.
Would you want him back?
I don't think so. I don't think so on that team because I think and McCarthy said this at the press conference. This is about establishing Tony Pollard. And it's kind of like when Tony Parker left the Spurs when they were trying to grow DeJounte. Tony had another year in him. He knew that. The Spurs knew that. But it was time. It was time for DeJounte to lead. And you had to let Tony go because of that. And he understood, and he came back, got his jersey retired. It was time for Zeke to go. Even if you bring him back with Pollard as your main guy, there's something in the room about Zeke being the big brother to Tony Pollard. It doesn't allow Pollard to be that leader. And so I don't think he will come back. I think he's got something left in the tank for somebody, but it just can't be in Dallas.
I'm just glad something like that leaked out because I think that really shows fans on another level who this guy is as a person, right? I mean, we've talked ad nauseum. He's the first guy after a tough loss to say, hey, I'm over here, takes the heat off everybody in the room. You know that win, lose, or draw, at least Ezekiel Elliott was going to talk after a game. And that was a good thing for everybody. But again, this is part of, I think, who he is as a player, why he accepted those paychecks. He felt like there were a lot of responsibilities that came along with it. And I think it's cool that now everybody else gets a chance to kind of see that as well, that this is not just a really good football player who maybe is a little long in the tooth. I still think he's got something left, whether it's in Dallas or somewhere else as well. But, you know, just a solid cat.
I mean, he played there for 7 years. You develop those relationships no matter who it's with. And you're there for so long, you're going to have love for everybody there. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So pretty much like right after, it felt like right after we signed off of the pod on Monday, Trevon Diggs got his deal. I think it was Tuesday, actually, that he ended up getting it, but that's what it felt like. 5 years, $97 million, could be worth up to $104 million with incentives, places him fifth highest paid corner in the league per year average. What did you guys think of the deal? Originally, when I saw it, I thought fifth is good, especially that he didn't break the bank and like break the entire market wide open, and that the Cowboys and him kind of both came to that realization, like maybe you're not the best corner in the league, but you're still worthy of a decent contract. So what about you guys?
Man, I love Trevon Diggs, but I think that's a little overvalued. I mean, is he a 3 interception a year guy, or is he an 11 interception a year guy? Was that such a ridiculous fluke? Because there's other stats that show he's given up more big plays and more yards than just about anybody else in the league outside of the 1 year where he was just ball hawking everything. Maybe they get Gilmore for that purpose to be like, dude, we have to find a happy medium where you're not over gambling on everything, trying to pick everything off and getting beat. He hadn't been a great tackler. But that's what the market bore. I thought CD would have been the bigger priority, and still may be, I guess. Good for him. I'm glad. As long as they can afford everybody, as long as they pay Micah Parsons and CD Lamb too, and those guys are happy, I'm good with it. I'm not so concerned about Zack Martin. I know everybody else is, and he deserves it. But those 3 young guys are bigger priorities.
Well, I think your point about Diggs being a middle of the road type of payment in terms of what corners are getting paid probably is the reason why his deal got done first, because CD's probably going to command a lot more money, obviously, given his stature in the league as well. You know, it is a tough one to measure because I can't get out of my head 17 picks in 3 years. That's a hell of a lot. I know most of them came. Yeah, but I mean, at the end of last year, there really was nobody paired the opposite side of the field. I mean, everybody knew that they weren't going to be throwing to his side of the field, especially in those playoff games. And I'm not saying nobody was over there, but you bring in on Gilmore or somebody else with some skins on the wall, you know, how much better or how many more stats or how many opportunities is Diggs going to get now because of that? So it's kind of hard to know what the Cowboys' thinking is on this. Sounds like a little bit of a sweetheart deal for both teams, and obviously it turns out that both parties are good with it because they signed the deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, and Trevon he seems like a good dude. He's a quiet dude, but like once he got the deal, he was extremely appreciative of getting that money and what it'll do for his family. So it's always awesome to see that. I don't think that he should get a huge deal. I didn't, and I've said that for the last couple of weeks. However, 5 years, $97 million. You're fifth now. You still have Sauce Gardner that's going to be coming up. You have Pat Surtain that's going to be coming up, who are going to reset the entire market. So getting this now under this number,
kind of like Dak with the quarterback number. When Dak got his number.
Well, same with Pat Mahomes. Like Pat Mahomes set the market, and then now look at Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Everyone's overtaking him now.
Yeah.
So Trevon's deal in 3 years might look really good.
Yeah.
Multiple times this week, Jerry and Mike McCarthy have both said that they think this is the best team that they've had out of their 4 years. Do you guys think that's true?
I do. I think the balance of older, younger, the balance of athletes, the distribution of talent over all the positions. I think they're a little weak at tight end, but their offensive line has gotten better with Terrence Steele's development and the draft pick Tyler Smith. And if Tyron's healthy, they're better there. I think they're better in the receiving core. Running back, I do think they're better because I think Zeke was on the way down. They've made great acquisitions. They've drafted well. I think the tight end from Michigan is going to be fine, and I think the defensive lineman is going to be good. So, yeah, I think they have more talent and more explosive talent because I think Pollard and CD are getting ready to take a huge jump.
Yeah, and I think they have the potential to be the best team they've ever had, but it's really kind of hard to know, right? I mean, Don mentioned the tight end
Ever had or just the last 4 years?
What? Pardon me?
Ever had or
4
just the
years.
last 4 years?
Last 4 years. This is going to be the best
Since
team.
McCarthy's got
Yeah.
Right,
last
right.
4 years.
Yeah. So with with their tight end grouping being a little bit of a question mark, and then, how many games did they get clutch kicking last year? Where's that going to stack up? I mean, we all know that most of these games are decided by 7 points or fewer.
So many questions regarding the kicker. So many questions. I have so many questions about their kicker.
Right.
Especially
So, for me, there's a little bit of that, but I think overall, if I was leaning one way or the other, I'd probably have to say yes. I just think that the corporate knowledge now with McCarthy, the unknown factor of him now also calling the plays, will it make him a better game manager while he's doing this? I think the potential is definitely there to have that happen. But if they don't make the playoffs or get bounced in the first round, then, we might be having a different discussion, right?
Can we just be clear to Mike that the threshold is 17 seconds to run a quarterback sneak with no timeouts and spike versus 13 seconds?
How about the who's going to snap the ball when they have a running back do it this year? Is it going to be Tony? Is it going to be Rojo?
What was that, man?
Yeah.
I don't know, but what was worse, that play or the Colts play from a couple of years ago where they lined up like three guys in the middle and then they tried to do like the swinging gate and it never worked? Right. I don't know. I think that this one was worse.
Just think this, though.
It wasn't good.
Ezekiel Elliott's last snap as a Dallas Cowboy, he gets canned playing center.
I mean, now at least he can say he played center for the Dallas Cowboys.
That's right.
Last thing before we get to my conversation with Zach from a little earlier, the Zack Martin situation, obviously it's 3 days old now, or about a week old, but 3 days into camp. I was a little surprised at how tight-lipped everybody was, and they almost seemed what's the word? They almost seemed put off. They almost seemed put off by the questions. Like they didn't want to be asked that, and they can't believe they were being asked about that. Jerry didn't say anything. Steven didn't say anything. Mike McCarthy just talked about how important he is to the team. It surprised me a little bit knowing how happy and like wanting to talk Jerry usually is.
He looked upset.
Yeah, he did.
He looked like Zach had
kind of put him over a barrel. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm Team Zach on this one. I think but I'll say this, and I said this earlier to David Chancellor this week. If I'm Jerry, and he's really, it's a distribution process, certainly. If you give $1 to somebody, you can't give it to the other. If that's the case, sorry, Zach. No, I think he deserves everything he gets. Soldier, taking one for the team, 5 years in a row, renegotiates and restructures so that they have cap money for other people. Always on time, leader, Pro Bowler, great guy, deserves to be top 1 or 2 guards in the league. No question about it. But if there's only so much money and it's Diggs, CD, Parsons, Dak down the road, and they know they're going to have to spend this money, then your 32-year-old 9-year guard has to be last in line. I'm sorry.
I disagree with that one.
If he's 28, yes. But it's one of those tough calls. He's still very, very good. But you're going to lose CD Lamb because you're going to pay Zack Martin? No way.
Yeah, I don't know the dynamics of what's going on with their salary cap. And let's just say, for instance, that last year when Zack Martin was renegotiating his deal, they promised him something. And let's just say, for the sake of hypotheticals, they're not giving him what they promised him last year. That's one thing. We don't know that that's the case or not the case. To me, it's you signed a deal, live up to the deal. This is the last guy I thought would ever be pulling this, especially a guy that's already gotten his second payday, which was pretty significant when he got it. And I get it, Lane Johnson's 33 of the Eagles, he's making $23 million a year. And the guy in the Falcons who's younger than him is making whatever it is, $20.5 million a year. But Zack Martin is still making $13 or $14 million a year. I know that because of bonuses and all that, his base isn't very good. You could put all that aside, I think, because, again, these contracts are set up because, or the way the Cowboys do it. I mean, you're thinking about down the road. Every nickel that you're taking away now is maybe somebody like CD who is working on his second contract. And I know times have changed, and good for you, Zack Martin. Everybody's happy that you're still one of the best guards in the league, but you're 32. You've already gotten your huge contract that puts you in the upper echelon of all the players in the league. And if he wants another one similar to that now, I just think they've got numbers at the offensive line position. Would it suck to lose him? Absolutely. The guy's only not played in like 8 or 9 ball games his whole career. He's super valuable to this team. He's their best offensive lineman, bar none.
And maybe one of the top 5 in the league.
But
but at $14 million a year, when, again, Lane Johnson's making all his money now because the Eagles are not paying their quarterback what the Cowboys are paying Dak. It was the same thing when Dak was a 4th-round pick or whatever the hell he was, and he was making $600,000 a year. Everybody else was getting paid because you didn't have to lock that money down with your quarterback. It's a shell game that every team's got to play, and it's just a bad time for Zack Martin to be going and asking for more money.
That's the thing. It's like contracts are only worth the paper they're written on. Like NFL owners don't go with the contracts that they have. So saying players need to honor the contract is a bunch of BS. They don't need to honor the contract because NFL owners don't have to honor the contracts. They'll cut you next week if they really have to. So him asking for $7 million more this year, they could easily pacify him and give him a couple $1 million in a signing bonus and be like, okay, we'll deal with this next offseason. We have a bunch of other priorities to go with right now. We have that.
They will.
And I think that's how they're going to get there.
Yeah.
But the way that Jerry and Steven and Mike McCarthy all looked when they were asked that question this week really, really took me back.
They can't. I mean, Jerry's not going to tip his hand from a negotiating standpoint. Neither is Zach. And that's how everybody knows how this ends. This ends with him in uniform playing against the Giants with some more money in his pocket.
I hope so.
But not the amount that he wants by any means, and more than Jerry wants to pay right now. But it's not going to compromise what they're going to give CD and Micah.
One further point, too, about the whole contract thing. It's like, yeah, you're right. Those contracts aren't worth the paper that they're printed on. But the Players Association agreed to these kinds of things that happen. So to just say that the players aren't responsible for, what the owners are doing when they collectively bargained how this all gets done, I think that's missing the point a little bit too.
The signing bonus checks are worth the paper they're written on, and that's what they get up front. And every player in the NFL knows that the only money they're guaranteed to put in the bank is what they get in the signing bonus. And Zach agreed to that at the time.
I mean, yeah, and then he's helped him out the last 5 years.
Yes,
there's no doubt. I mean, but again, do we pay him what he's worth at his position, or is he just simply honoring his contract. They paid him $14 million a year to be the best Zack Martin he could be. And I get it now, the dynamic has changed, but so has the dollars that are allocated for everybody else on the team.
And I agree with you. But if you go with that line of thinking, right, is this was the deal at the time. He's still number 1 guard, number 2 guard in the league, but he's 9th highest paid, and he's $7 million less than the 2 highest guys. And he's saying, wait, I agree to that under different market conditions. I'm still number 2. Now I want the most money, just like I got then. If that's the case, then Dak Prescott can't coming back and saying, well, wait, Mahomes got this, Herbert got this. Now I want this, because Dak is not the number 2 quarterback in the league.
Right. And again, you take it a step further too. It's like he's not throwing touchdowns. He's not scoring touchdowns. He's a people mover, right? And I mean, I don't want to minimize his greatness, but in this argument, we're discussing money. And again, not knowing fully what the cap situation looks like with the Cowboys, or what may or may not have been promised Zack Martin if he renegotiated his deal last time. I mean, it's a tough thing to weigh, because there is such a thing as a salary cap.
He is a guard. He's not a tackle. He's not a center. I get it. However, he's the best.
Yeah.
Right.
He's literally the best guard in the league.
And Jerry's talking about breaking the bank for Dak Prescott again to pay him market value, and I don't think he should.
No,
I think he's paying Dak at the time he really overpaid Dak. Now he's paying Dak about exactly where he needs to be paid.
Middle of the road.
Yeah.
Anything else from you guys before we get to Zach's interview? Any other
I'm
outstanding
confused. Zack Martin's
thoughts?
interview? Zack
Hedrick.
Hedrick? Yeah.
Zack Hedrick. I wish I got Zack Martin on. That'd be cool. That'd be exclusive.
He wouldn't like what me and Chuck had just
Yeah,
had to say about
right.
him.
I think, he and I would be best friends.
Right? Again, quality guy in the room too.
Quality.
Tough loss. You go. I mean, everything that you want in a football player, it's Zack Martin. However, I have to admit, this all caught me by surprise with him. He was the last guy I thought would ever do this.
All right, well, we've heard enough from Don and Chuck. Let's get over to our Cowboys insider, Zack Hedrick. I was able to chat with him a little bit earlier this morning. It was 8 o'clock, so he was just getting his coffee, and let's hear from him.
Well, we welcome in our Zack Hedrick. He's our Cowboys reporter out to camp. It's 8 o'clock for you. We're recording it's Thursday morning. You awake?
Bright and early. We're good. We're ready to go.
First appearance on the Sneakers and Cleats pod. How's California going?
It's good, man. No, I appreciate you having me on. First off, I wanted to tell you in person, but congrats on the sports nomination, man, for the Emmys. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, that story, it meant a lot to me. I mean, it was 2 amazing high schoolers. So
Right.
that's what we get in the business for, is telling cool stories about cool individuals.
No doubt. Yeah. And tons of storylines out here. I mean, so it's just kind of overwhelming sometimes. Just you think you kind of are on top of it, and then it's like the next wave comes. So,
well, I think the news that no Cowboy fan wanted to hear happened yesterday. It was the first injury of training camp. I think we all know that injuries are going to happen, but Donovan Wilson goes down in 4 to 6 weeks with a calf strain. Well, first things first, like, where were you when that happened? Did you see anything, and what are you hearing from around there?
So I didn't see it happen, and I didn't see Donovan getting carted off or anything like that. Obviously a blow, but the good news is that it's early on in training camp, and it's like he's still going to probably be available for the regular season. So obviously he wants to be out there, but I mean, he's a guy that's been around. So saw a little bit of him doing some drill work early, but so that was obviously before the injury. But, I guess no player wants to miss time, right? The injuries, like you said, they're part of the game. But the good news is that it's 4 to 6 weeks. Season doesn't start until September, so he's got time to get back out there and kind of get his feet under him before they start playing games for real.
I think that's going to create more of an emphasis on like De'Aaron Bland, and as he comes in his second year, and the other DBs that are back there.
Yeah, I think it creates more opportunity. And I'm sure we'll get into it more later. It's like the Zack Martin situation. It's like it gives other guys more chances at reps that maybe wouldn't have them in training camp. So Duran, he's not more of a safety. I mean, I don't know. They may move him around. We'll see, because Dan Quinn is talking about, he's wanting guys to play all over the place. It's not really having set positions. I mean, certain guys are, yes, but Duran is kind of like a nickel, but Malik Hooker is still there. You got Jaron Curse at the other safety spot, so they do have some depth at safety. And who knows, you might even see Stephon Gilmore kind of range around a little bit, but yeah, you definitely want him at the other corner spot. So it creates a little depth issue maybe for training camp, but once Donovan comes back, I think it's going to be clicking just like it should.
Seeing the injury is like the best case scenario, 4 to 6 weeks, instead of when you hear someone's carted off, you immediately assume it's season long.
Right. Yeah. I mean, grade 2, it sounds bad, but it's a calf, not a hammy. Like hammy would be, I think, even longer, right? But it's kind of, it is bad news, but looking at that, it's early on in training camp. It should, hopefully heal up quick, and he and Donovan can get back out there.
Right. And it's not like it happened to a rookie where where it might derail their entire training camp. They're trying to make a name for themselves. Like, he's already made a name for himself for the most part.
Yeah, no,
he's going to be played regardless,
Yeah, and he got that contract in the offseason. I mean, because he was lights out last year. He came up from his safety spot, would make plays in the run, helped out in coverage and everything. So, yeah, Donovan knows the system, and so he won't miss any time there. I'm sure he's just wanting. It's kind of like you've been looking forward to this time, for months. And then it's just like, well, sorry, you can't play anymore. And then It's like, so that's definitely a big bummer for him.
For sure. What were your general impressions of the first few days in general? We had the opening press conferences, Zack Martin obviously not being there, and then the presser yesterday from Mike McCarthy. So first few days, what are kind of empty the notebook for me?
Yeah, there's there's not too much. We've only had one practice so far. At this time, but it's the practice is a lot to look at. It's guys all over the field. You kind of want to maybe stay with one position group, but then it's like, well, I want to check out what these guys are doing too. So you're trying to range around and see as much as you can, but at the same time, you want to make sure it's like you want to see how each guy is going through each rep, and get a little, info or try to just glean something from watching these guys. But then it's like, well, you need to make sure you go around and see what the other position groups are doing. So I watched a lot of quarterbacks and running backs yesterday. And first impressions of camp, it's a big kind of like family reunion almost. It's like, the band's getting back together because, Jerry Jones at the press conference. I mean, Jerry loves some Jerry, and he wants to make sure he gets his time to shine. So he got that. But, it's not any big, bold proclamations from him, and not that he has made any in the past few years, but I get a sense that there's just a lot of confidence from this team going in. I mean, they're coming off 12-win seasons, 2 seasons where they went into the playoffs. Sure, it's just one and done. They make one playoff win and then they're out. But they have, I think, a sense of, hey, we're on our way, and we're one of those teams that's like, yeah, we're going to be contending. So I don't know. Did you asked about the Zack Martin situation as well?
Yeah, so I was going to get to that. Let's talk about that. So Zack Martin situation, they were very tight-lipped, which kind of surprised me at the beginning of it. Like in that opening press conference, everyone obviously asking about Zack Martin. He wasn't on the team charter. He's not there right now. We don't know where he is. He might be at like a coffee shop down the street that is just waiting for the call. But I was a little bit surprised that they were just so tight-lipped about that situation.
It's a little, it's a little different. I mean, they've been tight-lipped about everything so far, because we found out yesterday, Trevon Diggs, the deal was basically done when he was on the team playing, headed out to Oxnard. And, he was crying and, thinking about his family, which was really cool. I mean, we didn't really get to see that from Trevon before. He really kind of opened up. But I think, yeah, that's kind of like a departure from the Cowboys that we do know, because it's like, when something gets done, Jerry's kind of like, he can't sit still because he wants to get something out there. But it he didn't mention anything during the press conference about that situation. And then it didn't surprise me that they weren't going to say anything about Zach. Um, Zack Martin's a pro, he's been there. I don't think it's like a detriment to him that he's not getting these reps in camp, because it's just like, you're a 6-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler. Do you really need the reps in training camp? But yes, they do want him there because they want to start building that continuity. Um, I think they're working on it. It's kind of hard to, say for sure like where they are in it, because how close they are, how far away, we have no idea. But I think before camp is through, we'll see Zack Martin out there getting some practice reps in before they start playing games. It doesn't seem like to me Martin's going to be the type of player that's going to kind of try and pull a Saquon Barkley where he's like, I'm going to sit out games. No, I don't think Martin's going to do that.
When you look at the offense, though, do you think it's a little bit kind of devoid of leaders almost? You're missing Zeke, obviously. Zeke's not there. He's not on the team anymore. He's cut, and he's been one of their leaders for a long time. Zack Martin now not there. It's forcing a lot of other people to step up, like Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, forcing them into that leadership role. Tyron Smith obviously has been there, but maybe forcing other guys like Tyler Biadasz to come out and be leaders. Do you think like Zach not being there is giving other guys opportunities to maybe be a leader or step into a leadership role?
Yeah, for sure. You're not going to really get much from Tyron Smith. I mean, Tyron's going to talk to his offensive line guys, and that's it.
Right.
Tyron will talk, but he's a pro. I don't want any misconceptions there. Tyron's a pro, but yeah, he's not going to divulge too much or share too much.
Right.
When the press comes up and talks to him and wants a tell all, it's like, no, he's going to keep it in between the lines. But yeah, Tyler Biadasz, he's turned into a solid player, and it really kind of all starts from him. Matt, you played, on the line, you kind of know it's like that center is the guy. He's the quarterback calling everything out. They kind of had a rotating thing at center yesterday. It was weird. We saw Matt Farniak snapping to Dak and everything, but they were kind of rotating guys through. Again, getting that versatility in, that's big for the Cowboys up front. They want offensive linemen kind of rotating through. I think it does give, Zach not being there, it gives other guys a chance to be leaders. We've heard from Coach McCarthy that Tony Pollard's been stepping up already, really kind of showing the way, leading by example. But then, of course, we can't forget, they got the biggest leader of all, Dak, and he's there. So Dak's, showing everybody the way. And, it would be nice to have Martin there. But I think Dak's still being there, they're not going to really skip a beat.
Has anything surprised you so far in training camp, whether it's something someone said, something you saw on the field?
That's a good question. I don't know if anything's really surprised me so far just yet, where it's just kind of like, ooh, wow, that's different. I think really the only thing, and this is just because I haven't seen an NFL practice live for the first time, it goes by quick. You're going in thinking, okay, 2-hour practice, we're going to see a lot. And it's just like, no, it's bam, 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 bam. It's like they're on from one thing to the next. And when the horn blows, it's like, it doesn't matter who's up next on the rep list or who was going to go next. It's like they're moving on. So it's people kind of fall into that coach speak all the time of making all the reps count and stuff like that. But you actually see it when you go out there and go, oh, wow, yeah, it doesn't matter if Leighton Vander Esch or Deuce Vaughn, rookie, veteran, whatever. It's like whoever was next in line, when it's time to move on to the next thing, it's just like, nope, that's it. It's done. So it's like, yeah, they really have to make every rep count.
Speaking of reps, Dak Prescott threw his first kick yesterday. Obviously, it came through the hands of one of the receivers and wasn't wasn't his fault, but seems to be the story with a lot of Dak's balls. It's like it's not his fault, but ends up still causing a turnover. Obviously, that got some fans on Twitter and throughout worried once that video surfaced. Is there any worry about Dak while they're in Cowboys training camp?
No, I think the fans need to calm down. I did see that interception, and when I saw it happen, I went, huh, that's just like last year. You know, it bounced right off Simi Fajoko's hands and just popped straight up. So it's just like, yeah, that's easy pickings. Dak looks sharp. You know, I'm no quarterback expert. I wish we could hear from Troy Aikman, who was out here at camp yesterday. He was keeping a close eye on the quarterbacks group yesterday when they were going through individual group drills and pass skill and all that kind of stuff. So Dak looks smart. I know that video, the pick is circulating like on Twitter and stuff, but there's another video where, Dak rolls out, play fakes and then is rolling to his right. And then he drops a ball right into this tight little window in one of those, net targets. And I mean, it's just kind of like, talk about accuracy. I mean, it's just like the dude's going to be fine. And, it's hard to glean stuff from 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 drills, lots of checkdowns and stuff, but he looks good. I'm interested to hear from him today on just where he thinks he's at, through OTAs. All we heard is, oh yeah, transition's good. The offense is, where we want to be. So I'm really interested to, get his thoughts today after practice.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what he says as well. It's just kind of what you described. It's the same thing as last year. He's got all the throws in his bag. He can do whatever he wants on the field whenever he wants. And then Simi Fehoko drops one and it's going the other way, and it causes Cowboys fans a lot of ache. Mm-hmm. Last thing for you before I let you go here. Multiple times this week in their press conferences, Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones have said that this is the best team out of the 4 years. Do you get that feeling as well, that this is the most complete team? I mean, outside of the injury, obviously, that just happened, but as a whole, this team kind of has that chemistry and that they might be the best one out of the 4.
Yeah, and Jerry always is going to kind of say, yeah, we're a contender. I'm more interested in Mike McCarthy. I mean, he was talking about culture. Yeah, the culture is the best it's been in 4 years. And of course, I think a little bit of it is just kind of like, well, yeah, we're trying to build these guys up. But I really think they do, with the moves that they made, it's not just, oh, we're bringing in rookies and we're going to, play them right away, which the Cowboys have done. Last year, the rookie class made tons of impacts across the board. I mean, Tyler Smith, obviously the first round pick, he played right away. Deron Bland, he led the team in interceptions last year. So he made an impact right away. I mean, you had these guys all over where it's just like, yeah, they're players. And so they're looking for those guys to do it again. But it's the offseason moves that they made. It was nothing really splashy, but it's just kind of like Jerry was asked, with those moves, bringing in Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, is it more of an all-in feel? And Jerry didn't say, no, it's not all in, but it's just like, yeah, it's like we've got the guys here to make our team better and try and get over the hump. So, last year after Tony Pollard went down in the playoff game to San Francisco, it was like Dak didn't have anybody to get the ball to. Well, now he does, because it's CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks. We'll have to see how Michael Gallup, is he actually back? He wasn't last year. And he said because it was his knee, just mentally he was not all the way there yet. So if Michael Gallup can get back to Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard leads the way for the young running back group. That's a really interesting position, because Tony Pollard, Malik Davis look good. Ronald Jones, maybe he's the power back. I don't know, because it's just the differences in speed that stood out to me, because it was just kind of like, wow, that's Ronald Jones doesn't get through these, little pylons or whatever as quickly as the other guys do. So we'll see what happens there. And then defensively, Tank Lawrence talked about it yesterday, DeMarcus Lawrence. It's like we feel really good about our cast. On the defensive side, it's like we've got playmakers everywhere, got guys who can get to the quarterback up front and ball hawks in the back. So I think they do have all the pieces in place. I would be interested to see. Jerry Jones said it, our roster is always evolving. So they're always looking to add which position. I think they're going to wait and see once they get to the end of training camp.
You mentioned the rookies, so real quickly, how does Mozzie and DeMarvion and Deuce Vaughn and Schoonmaker, how are all those guys looking and kind of adjusting to?
So I haven't seen anything of Mozzie just yet. I wasn't able to get around to see how he was doing, but Deuce. He's so short in stature. It's kind of like startling to see. I mean, but the dude is built like he's just solid. And so I think he's really gonna, and he's impressed. Tony Pollard talked about him yesterday. It's like, man, he looks like he's ready to play. Like he's goes about things the right way. He's kind of like got an old guy mentality a little bit, just because it's like, he's curious about what to do and what he needs to do next. So I think the big thing for those rookies, especially DeMarvion and Deuce and Schoonmaker, I think can mix in with the tight end group pretty well. He hasn't gotten much action yet because he's still kind of dealing with some plantar fasciitis a little bit. So he's kind of being held out just, for the time being. But he should mix in with the tight end groups well. For DeMarvion and Deuce, I think it's more of what kind of impact can they make on special teams. And that's something Mike McCarthy mentioned before practice yesterday. These guys, we want them to contribute to their respective sides of the ball, but we want them to also do special teams things. And it seems like DeMarvion, he's really kind of embraced that, and he's going to do that right away.
All right, dude. Well, it's going to be interesting this weekend, and it's going to be an interesting month and a half until we get to that first Sunday night.
Well, yeah. Giants, that'll be good, but I think we're going to know a lot more. Sure, we'll get a couple of weeks to camp in and practice, but then once they get some preseason games in, then we'll kind of start to see, okay, what kind of shape will this team take heading into the regular season.
Plus, it's like, who's the rotation guys? What rookies are going to make impacts right away? Where's Overshown going to play? It's like all that stuff. You don't really know that after one day of camp. We're going to have to find that out in the next coming weeks.
Absolutely. Hit the nail on the head.
All right, dude. Well, I appreciate you. Going to go get more coffee in you before.
Yeah. Well, water, man, too. It's cooler out here, but the sun, it's like a magnifying glass. It ain't like back in San Antonio. San Antonio, like, you can stand. It's hot in San Antonio, but out here it's just like, man, the sun just beats down on you. It's 80 degrees. It's nice, but it's just like, man, this thing is like intense.
I mean, I'm from Southern California, but where I'm from, it's 115 degrees right now in Palm Desert, Palm Springs area. So 80 degrees sounds lovely.
It's nice. It is nice. So I'm not complaining. I don't want people to get the wrong, but it's just like, man, I'm burnt. I've got hat, sunglasses, sunscreen. It's just like I'm trying not to get burnt.
You put some sunscreen on Jack's head for him?
A little bit. No, Jack's covered. He's got it. He's the pro, man. He knows what to do.
Well, that was our Zack Hedrick there. He's out there in Oxnard having a great old time. So appreciate him waking up a little early for us and giving us his rundown of what he's been seeing the first couple of days. That's all we got for you on this week's episode of Sneakers and Cleats Podcast, episode 10. A quick reminder, you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So if you want to see the Zoom that Zach and I did a little earlier, just hop over to YouTube. You'll see it all there. Plus, please download, subscribe, rate, review, unsubscribe, resubscribe, re-rate, re-review, give us a 5-star rating, give us some feedback. It always helps us out a lot. We'll be back on Monday with the latest on Cowboys camp as football season is well underway. I love the sound of that. Until then, thanks for listening to Sneakers and Cleats Podcast. We'll see you next time.